There's truth and there's untruth. But if you stick to the truth, even against the whole world, you're still not mad.
And this person is starting to picture how it could have happened. And what could have been turns into what would have been, turns into what was.
So by the third interview, the memory has taken hold. And it wasn't just this once. Shaw was able to convince over 70% of participants that they committed a crime.
I was incredibly surprised at the rate that I had in terms of successfully implanting these false memories.
False memory studies like this question one of the cornerstones of the criminal justice system.
In those hundreds of cases where DNA testing has proven that these individuals were wrongly convicted, about 3/4 of the time, the convictions were based on faulty eyewitness testimony.
Hello, it's September 2025. Can you believe that fall is around the corner and we'll be coming up to the end of another year? Unbelievable. Now, this video is inspired by a video that I had watched, and it had to do with an innocent man being pressured to admit to a serious crime that he didn't commit. But there's a big punchline in the end. Now, over the years, I've highlighted, for example, the studies made famous by Julia Shaw implanting false memories. And during her research, she was able to convince at least, if not more, 3/4 of the participants that they committed a terrible crime. And in fact, she had to stop the experiment with these people because some of these people were experiencing, I'm just trying to think how to word craft this, some harmful thoughts to themselves. Now, this story with regards to this man had called the police and filed a missing report for his father. And for some strange reason, the police ended up thinking that this man took his father from life. And they arrested him and took him to the interrogation room. And 17 hours later, he confessed to taking his father from life. And the methods that they used were unusual, including, for example, bringing his dog to the interrogation room, saying that his dog will have to be put down after witnessing such a horrific event. But there's a big punchline to all this. That being, the father was in an airport, alive. I guess visiting family or something. And the father didn't return when he said he would, and this is what prompted this man to call the police. Now, I think his father was elderly, so you can kind of see where this is going, but they were able to gaslight this man to testify, to admit to a crime he did not commit, an innocent man. Now, that is tyranny and that is injustice. And this is the type of thing that goes on all the time, especially with innocent people, where they gaslight people to actually get them to believe and doubt for example, their innocence. And perhaps over time, they start to say, well, yeah, everyone's saying that I did whatever it is, whether it be a small crime to a major crime. Doesn't matter. But this is what they do. The system just keeps repeating and moving forward. And for example, speaking over a person to push through their agenda. Now, whether the agenda has malicious intent or not, here's the big problem. And I've said this before, liberalism has infected even the most conservative types, where they start to believe, and to believe is to make an uninformed conclusion, something that's not real, it's something that's not true. So when you have these types of people in various positions of authority, from, for example, police officers to judges and lawyers, the truth doesn't matter. It's what they want the truth to be. And no amount of evidence will change that. And this is where we have people being wrongfully convicted. Now, this is setting aside for a moment where there's agendas where they know the person is innocent, but they still want to convict them. And I've discussed this in other videos as well. But it's not just, for example, the judicial system or law enforcement or anything else. You can even relate this to, for example, the medical profession, where you would have a real doctor, a medical doctor, a real one, who in their own minds convinced that, yeah, there's nothing wrong with the person, and there most definitely is something wrong with the person. Or you can have the opposite, where there's nothing wrong with the person, but they're convinced that there is something wrong, like physically, like a real doctor. And either way, the treatment program that they might recommend or go through with is what causes harm, to the point of even someone leaving life. So we see this in the medical profession as well. Now, I'm just going to expand on this with the fake doctors, those who are part of the liberal arts, theoretical pseudoscience of psychology. And these people really gaslight people. There's something wrong with you. You're sitting different. No matter how you sit, how you dress, what you say, they will twist it in their minds, because that's how their minds operate. They have a conclusion, and then they try to find everything to support it, which again omits all sorts of reality, we'll say. But here's the thing. We also see this in society. For example, how governing bodies will control a population, convince the population of stuff. And I'm going to use what's currently happening in Canada right now with the whole Western provinces wanting to separate. Now, we have to keep in mind something very important, that it's not everyone. It's only about 20% of the people. And I've done a whole series on this of 5 videos, unplanned, how they're really pushing all these so-called reasons, which are easily debunked, to have people separate. But what they're doing is they're just keep saying the same thing over and over, and gaslighting people, trying to convince people that, yes, Alberta should stand alone. Alberta has always stood alone, and should separate, perhaps become the 51st state. They're gaslighting people, just like they did those so-called police officers with this man and his father. They're convincing people of something that is not real. And we see this not only with this example in Canada and in the Western provinces, it's all nonsense. And there's so many more of these channels talking about this nonsense. It's ridiculous. You see this on the world stage. You see this type of thing happening even in interpersonal relationships, among friends, family, perhaps romantic relationships. You see this type of thing happening all the time. The very few people who are strong in character can resist, and it's hard. Sometimes they have to remind themselves by looking at the reality, the evidence, the independent evidence, the plethora of independent evidence, to remind them that yes, they are right. But most people are not that strong in character. In fact, many people are weak in character and will easily fold. And this is where we see real injustice, real tyranny, and real freedoms being taken. And the small amount of people that are able to resist are the ones that are saying, hey, look, we need to fix this. But again, the majority of the people are not smart enough, not intelligent enough to see it. They'd rather run before they learn to walk. Oh, we're going to change the world, we're going to fix a nation, or whatever nonsense they think, rather than learning and helping these smaller cases and stuff like that. Now, going back to this man, the evidence that he relied on in the end was his father being alive, and that kind of ended that. And the sad part about that story, for the officers, were not only that he didn't even get a slap on the wrist, but they had promotions. And we see this, for example, with doctors, real doctors, and these fake doctors, as well as politicians, people in various levels in various governing bodies. These people that no one should be listening to, even their own family and friends, keep getting pushed up and up and up. And I'm really trying to get people's attention to this. And I've said this for many times over many years in many videos. If you want to make change, you're going to have to make change and start at the bottom. And that's going to impact the bigger injustices, the bigger tyrannies. And that's where the real fight for freedom is. But we live in a world where a majority of the people are no different than the characters in the movie Idiocracy. Anyway, just things to think about. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
Find the true answer. And it said the question. I said, question what? And it said everything. I said, where do I look to find the true answer? And it said within. And I said, within what? And it said yourself. I said, could I find it in history? And I want to know if I can find the answer in history. It said yes. I said, where in history? It said patterns. It said patterns. It said patterns.
Run. Run your ass off. Look, I'm not trying to spook you. I just want to help. And I'm not going to bullshit you. See, this is the real world. And the real world ain't about heroes and miracles. This world's about one thing. Survival. 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 That's all there is. This small piece of dialogue changes a major plot point completely.
Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, oh, when is it going to get easier? When you die.